Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Every Day's a Train Wreck. I'm your host, Marley Major, and I have a great guest for us today on the podcast. Her name is Patrice Bonfiglio, and I think I got that last name right. Since the G is silent, I want to highlight that. I did my best. Patrice and I are going to have a fabulous conversation today about burnout, something that yours truly knows a lot about, and I'm sure many of the listeners, whether you work full-time, have kids, or just part of life post-COVID, you might be burned out. So, Patrice, welcome to the show, and please tell us your background, because it really relates to how you stumbled upon this magical subject of burnout.
I like the term magical. Yes. So,
right?
Marley, thank you for having me.
Reframe it.
Yeah, I'm excited to be on. I love your show.
Thank you.
I will dive in. I know burnout because I have worked in the hedge fund industry for my entire career, so about 20 years. It is high stakes, high pressure, and I do enjoy it. I love it, but it's almost impossible to do that, raise a family, be a part of the sandwich generation where you're taking care of kids and aging parents without a little burnout. So that's how I started. It was me. I felt it. And I thought everything I was reading about was either too superficial or too clinical. So I decided to become a student of burnout and host a podcast and try to get really practical advice and feedback from people around me.
So how long do you think it took you before, I'm not saying like how long did it take you to feel the symptoms of burnout, but how long did it take you in your career before you were like, oh, this is like, there might be a problem here?
A long time. I didn't even know. I assumed that if you had burnout, then everything stops. Like if you were still functioning and performing and having success, that meant that you weren't actually experiencing burnout.
Right.
But that's wrong. It's something that is just draining you. It's a sense of overwhelm. It is what happens when, you try to do everything without a village and you realize like, I am just hanging on like by a thread. Even if I am able to do it, that doesn't mean that it's healthy. So that's when I knew I need to change something.
And the reason I asked that question specifically is how long did it take you to recognize this? Because what I find is, well, first of all, having the podcast called Every Day's a Train Wreck is very nice because you do get to always focus on the backstory, right? And I think that the backstory is where, to me, the message really is, because so many of us go along, whether it's relationships, business, a particular job or particular project, anything. And then we start getting tired or not feel, it's like something is off, but we keep thinking, oh, I'm not working hard enough, or I'm not good enough at it, or I'm not, like, internalize it. And somehow it's like, I must have done something. I'm not like up to the challenge. And what it really is you got to talk to other people to realize that, burnout is part of the game. Just like, when you start your business, a lot of times there's a lot of euphoria, right? About, oh my gosh, I have my website, I have my this, or like when you start a podcast. That's why I think so many people start podcasts and then, they don't make it past the like 25 number because it's sort of like, oh, this isn't any fun anymore. It's a dopamine rush or whatever. But it's like once you get through some of those, hey, isn't this exciting? And now you're in the part of your career where you've been at it a while, right? Yeah. You've gotten, you've gotten a certain amount of success, or you've earned a certain amount of money. And then you kind of get to the point where you're like, okay, now what? And then I don't know about you, but then I get to the point where I'm like, how did I end up here? And is here even where I wanted to go? And sometimes it is. Sometimes there's a part of here that is, I love this part. I don't love this part, but it's, I'm just super impressed that not only did you say, wow, I'm burned out, but now it's like your total focus. Because I think if we could keep people from burning out, everything would be so much better, right? Maybe we wouldn't make rash decisions about like, I need to leave my marriage or my job or my...
Right.
Do you cover, like, whether it's on your podcast or in the community you're building, do you cover burnout just from the perspective of work, or does it, I'm burned out because I have kids and I'm taking care of my aging parents?
Oh, it's everything. That was one aspect of burnout that I felt was being glossed over because, there's the World Health Organization and they define it as a really corporate type of burnout where you have too much work. But what's happening is that our lives are too complicated and we don't have the right infrastructure. So even if you have burnout because of something that's going on at home, you are that one person and you're showing up everywhere, whether it's at your job or at your kid's school or at a community event, and it's still swirling around you. Right. You have to deal with it in a very holistic way, and you can't compartmentalize that aspect of your life. And one really interesting thing that I did, I had tons of opinions and hypotheses, and I actually did the research. So I commissioned a study on burnout. I worked with a founder, Stephanie Francis, and she has a company, Ontology AI, to create a study of workplace employees. And we found that it's about even. When they report what's the driving cause of their burnout, it's like 50-50. There's some slight differences between different groups, but people are walking around with a lot of baggage every day, and they're bringing that baggage to work and at home, and in the conversations that they're having, it's there. So we need to really unpack all of it.
So how do you do it? And I know that's the $64,000, $64 million, or $64 billion question. What do you do? But somebody like you, right? I mean, you've obviously been in very high stakes finance. You're at the top of your game. You're super successful. How do you all of a sudden say, how do you tackle this? I mean, it's like, how do you tackle mental illness with teenager? I mean, there's so much to it and it can feel so overwhelming. So how have you sort of picked a piece to focus on, or have you started just with all the general components of it?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think that's why so many people don't actually begin the work, because it's just so confusing to actually start, and you're overwhelmed to begin with, right? So unpacking this is difficult. The first thing I had to do was just be really honest with myself. You don't have to say anything to anyone else, but the way you think about your life, take a step back and evaluate what is really, difficult for me and how am I motivated? So for me, it was counterintuitive. I am motivated by work and by complicated problems. I like solving them. That's my thing, right? Not for everybody, but that's why I chose to go the route of having a podcast, because it gave me accountability, because it was like a job. That's something I needed. If it was just, I'm just going to work on my burnout on the side, guess what? I would put it on the back burner, just like anything else I would normally do.
It's like having a trainer, right? They're knocking at your door at 5:30 and all of a sudden you're like, oh, yes, ma'am, I can work out. No problem. right? But
yeah, you have to get yourself in gear, and it's fine, right? If you're not the person that's going to be motivated by a 4 a.m. alarm, don't set your life up that way. Right? It's not going to work for you, and that's fine. So, figure out what you actually like and what you want. And for me, I wasn't the type of person that just wanted to scale back and move to an island. Right. And I talked to people that did that, and it works for some. But for me, I want to be able to be healthy enough to keep striving, building, succeeding. So it's learning how to manage, this kind of like personal empire. It's almost like you have your whole, like you're a government, right? And you have your citizens of your household and you have your agenda. It's taking a bird's eye view and realizing where the gaps are. So when I spoke to, this is one of the earlier episodes, but Brittany Tran of Hot Mess Express, her organization is a bunch of moms. And if you write in and petition to them, they will come and help you and clean your house, right? Because because there was a real need for it. And they were even getting sponsorships from Clorox and other organizations, because there are situations like, let's say a parent passes away and you realize they have a house full of stuff that you have to go through. Imagine how overwhelming that is. You just need a village to come in and help you unbox and donate and, give away or sell things. Or if you've just had a baby, or maybe your second baby or third baby, and your house is a mess, right? And you're just stepping over stuff because you're trying to make it minute by minute through the day. Right?
Or you have postpartum, or God forbid your baby is, has to stay in the hospital a few days after you do. Or, there's so many.
Exactly.
Hot Mess Express, that certainly resonates with me. How do they do it? Is it only in a certain area?
They're nationwide. Yeah, I think they even have some international locations, but it's a volunteer organization.
Wow.
So you can look up on their website to see if they're in your area. And there's plenty of chapters opening all the time, because I think one thing that helps with burnout is realizing that you're not alone.
Yes,
so
huge.
If you're volunteering for that organization, one, you have the pride of being able to help someone. And two, okay, this is a little village for myself.
Yeah.
I highly recommend anyone to go on there, or even just talk to your friends and try to get it done within your own little friend group, right?
That's a terrific idea. And you could play this podcast and say, hey, you guys, listen, I was thinking we could start our own Hot Mess Express. And probably, what would happen though is they'd end up starting it like for their little friend group. And then what would happen is they'd end up becoming a chapter, and then end up doing it for so many other people. Because what I find is that, do you feel like burnout affects men and women proportionally or no?
So this was very interesting when I looked at the data. I thought that women, since they tend to carry the mental load for the family, that the numbers would be skewed much higher for women. It's about even. So
really?
men's perception of burnout for themselves is about equal to what women are feeling. So that's why, the Burnout Club, it's for men and women, right? We all have to get this right.
Because I wouldn't have called that. I would have said for sure women. And it's because we have to, for me, it's like if the kids would one of the kids would get sick, it would seem to be because I was an entrepreneur and had a little more flexibility in my schedule, which, sometimes is sort of a joke, but it was like somebody's got to go get the child, or somebody's got to go, or your parents are aging. And to me, it seems like the girl is always the one that sort of, okay, I'm going to, got to go handle it. Mm-hmm. Now, my question to you then is, do men maybe manifest it in terms of that's why they go get the red Porsche when they're having a midlife crisis and like start going to the gym and waxing and getting a new girlfriend? Like, is that how their burnout manifest? They're just like, I need something different? Or is that just totally unrelated?
It could be related. But one thing that connected to this, when I did the episode with Sandy Fiaschetti, and she has a consulting business. So PE firms usually bring her in to work with management of companies that they're invested in. Mm-hmm. She realized that when she had her sessions with the executives, the males were crying in the sessions because the pressure was so high and they felt like they had to keep a front. They had to know all the answers. Yeah. So the struggle, and I think women also struggle with this, but there's definitely something to how men are moving through the society and the emotional load that they are bearing, and even if it's not the same for the genders, they're both feeling a sense of overwhelm.
Right. In a different way, and then maybe manifesting itself in a different way. And that's interesting. Because not that it's, we have these stereotypical things, but they're rooted somewhere in reality where like a woman, a woman gets frustrated and she bursts into tears, and, that could happen at the office or something if they're overwhelmed. And then a man gets angry but that's interesting that, because now that I think about it, I haven't seen like a lot of grown men in the workplace like burst into tears or start crying in the middle of something. But I've absolutely seen plenty of women do it. And often you think, wait, was that conversation that I just had that bad with them? And then you realize, no, it's because it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Right. So what's the difference between, because in my head, I kind of equate burnout and overwhelm almost as synonyms. Is that accurate? Do you agree? And if not, what's the difference?
I think it's a ongoing version of overwhelm. So we can all be overwhelmed, but if we think that there's a solution to it and it's feasible and we can just attain it, then that's something that's episodic. When it's just ongoing and there's really no quick fix for it or logistically feasible fix for it, that's when it manifests into burnout. And it can be in life, on the personal side, or at work, or a combination of it.
So let's dig a little deeper into this. So would overwhelm be, I'm at the office. Okay, let's pretend I'm feeling a lot of the symptoms of burnout. Like I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm over it. But if I went on a 10-day vacation, I'd come back and I'd feel refreshed and I'd feel reinvigorated. And that would make a lot of progress for me. I would imagine burnout would be, you could go on the vacation and come back and you'd be like dreading, oh my gosh, now I've got to go back to work.
Yes. Yeah. So I agree with you that burnout is not solvable by, vacation.
Right. Or feng shuiing your office, or it's like more of an overhaul.
Exactly. Yeah. And I thought that I spoke to Scott Anderson. He was saying, even if you take a sabbatical and you're gone for months, that doesn't actually resolve burnout, which I thought, oh, for sure. If you're getting away for that long, you can get in touch with yourself and, have a different mindset and all that. It doesn't work because it's how you are going about your everyday life. So if your infrastructure is still the same, if your coping mechanisms are still the same, you have to change those. So the break from it, while you might feel good when you're away. Yeah. And a lot of times people actually don't. There's studies that show people feel anxiety when they have downtime.
I mean, I certainly have been in that category for a lot of my life. Before we talk about that, I want to dig into, do you think that like when you go like you were saying, the sabbatical for the month and then, but it doesn't work? Because I have this theory about the root of the problem, whether it's with everything. Like, if you're not at the literal root of the problem and spend the time to get to the root of the problem, it doesn't matter. Like so many, I coach business owners on profitability and all this stuff. And if their pricing model doesn't reflect their true cost, with a healthy enough margin and with how much time it takes them to service the client, et cetera, built in, they all just think, oh, I need more sales. I need more clients. I need more fill in the blank. But if you're just digging your hole faster, and I guess because I've done that where you think, oh, if I just have more revenue, I will solve the problem. So I guess it boils down to, if your core tasks at work you're not passionate about any longer, maybe you've outgrown them, or maybe you aren't challenged by them, right? Because I would imagine the source of burnout can be for so many different reasons, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So it definitely, one of the tenets of burnout is that passion is gone. You're feeling fatigued by it all. That excitement is missing. And it's great that you bring up the example of the business owner, because there's at the cause, if they are truly honest, there is some sort of misalignment, right? So, maybe it is that the business is failing because they're mismanaging time, but unless they deal with that problem, it's not going to get better, right? It doesn't matter if you kind of like throw some, wallpaper on the situation. Or maybe it's that they really still want control, but their business has been successful and they've scaled and they don't want to hire people, right? Or they don't want to outsource it, but you need to, right? So until you deal with that, you're going to get, just keep feeling burnout, right? Or when a partnership goes sour, it happens all the time, right? You need to deal with that, right? Just being passive or conflict avoidant when you know that the business that you thought was going to flourish with a partnership isn't, right? You have to take care of those things.
Well,
It'll
and,
eat
and
you
that
alive.
makes sense, because whether you thought the business was going to flourish with a partnership, or let's say you just thought the business was going to flourish, or you thought your idea, or, COVID came or something changed, or your competitor or somebody came into the marketplace and took up your market share. I mean, there are so many things that can just wham you, and I call it the entrepreneurial bleed, where I talk about, it's like people talk about work-life balance and stuff. And these days it's not just entrepreneurs. Now it's so many of us, because we work from home, or we have an office at home, and, we're not necessarily like leaving our personal lives and then going to the office. And as entrepreneurs, I would be like, just because I can shut my office door, I'm going into the next room thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to make payroll again? How am I going to, you can't just, it doesn't just stop. It's
right.
If you have and vice versa. If I have a problem with my husband and then I'm in at work and it's just weighing on me and it's going to carry over. It doesn't matter if I just drove to the office. Did your research give you any of like the top reasons for burnout? Like, was there kind of like, oh, there are sort of 3 to 5 reasons, or was it really spread out?
So it's spread out with the reasons, but there are some themes that are helpful. And what I will say, a very encouraging point was that companies are actually spending money on trying to address burnout, and they do think burnout is a legitimate issue. I thought initially when I ran the study that there would be a much larger percentage that's just saying, you have to get your life together. That's not my problem.
Yeah.
So that's encouraging. So what we found was that some of these solutions just didn't actually line up with the problem. So when we're talking about on the corporate side, it could be just unrealistic expectations. The workload is not structured properly for the role, and the expectations are unclear, right? So having the transparency makes a huge difference. Having teams that can coordinate in a healthy way so that if you have time off, it actually does feel like time off.
Imagine.
Yeah. Right. Because like what's happening is that time off is becoming fake.
Right.
And that's why I love a recent episode with Chris Dyer. He was saying in his firm, it's pretty radical, but he has all employees, if you're taking a vacation over 4 days, you have to put an out of office message that says all the messages will be deleted. If you need assistance, contact, XYZ person.
Wow.
And then that person is responsible when you come back. You have a Zoom call. They brief you on what you need to know. And then on that Zoom call, you have to actually show them that your mailbox, you're highlighting everything and pressing delete.
Ooh.
Yeah. So within that system, he found that initially employees were super anxious about it, but he ended up having much, much, much better retention because of it. Because everyone agrees, right? The employers and employees, time off should theoretically help, right? The reason why it doesn't help is because most people are still working or fretting about either going back to work or the workload that's going to hit them when they return or missing out on certain meetings, right? So if there's a safety net system of how you can actually be away from the office, then you can begin to revitalize, right? Because you don't have that anxious thought in the back of your mind. So that was really a critical point in the survey. So almost every employee and employer mentioned, the time off disconnect.
That's fascinating. How did the Hot Mess Express start? What was the catalyst?
So a mom, I forget which state she lived in. It was a mom that saw a Facebook post of someone, I think that had recently had a baby, and she was just like, I need help. Can you please, recommend a cleaning service? And I think she maybe didn't have a big budget at all for cleaning. She just like really was trying to send an SOS.
No, we've
a
been
message for
there.
help.
God,
Yeah.
if you've had a new babe, like I just can think I am right back on that couch with that newborn going, oh my gosh, please sleep just 10 more minutes so I can just sleep, let alone clean the house. But
yeah, right. It's like sometimes mentally it's just a dark time when you're trying to navigate that. So this person, and I'm forgetting her name now, the founder, it's not Brittany Tran, but it's someone that is her friend. She gathered a group together and went to help this woman, and she was a stranger. It was just through Facebook. And from that, there was just a groundswelling of support for the concept, and they grew the company, and now it's nationwide.
What was the catalyst for you? What was the straw that broke the camel's back that had you say, oh my gosh, I need, like, this is not getting better. This has got to be something more. It's burnout instead of just constant overwhelm.
I think for me, it was when I physically couldn't move. So I had an issue.
That's definitely, I would think, is a good warning sign.
Yeah.
Paralysis. Patrice was fine until she couldn't move from the neck down. And then somebody said, and then when her bottom lip also became paralyzed, Patrice realized she needed to do something. Okay, that's the true story. Okay, good. So keep going.
Yeah. So, I probably should have recognized, I think I did to some degree, but did I do anything about it? No. Right.
No,
so I
never do.
Yeah. I recognized, because I had the concept of like, oh, I want to do something with burnout. And I even had talked about maybe even doing the podcast, but I didn't actually do anything about it until after this episode where my knee just locked and I couldn't straighten it. And it was.
And where were you? Like, were you at Home Depot, or were you like in the office of like
I was in Spain,
Manhattan?
I was in Spain. I was having a family vacation.
Oh no.
Yeah, I ended up like, it didn't get any better. Luckily, it was towards the end, but I ended up in the hospital in Madrid, and they couldn't figure out what was going wrong. They're like, you can either be an inpatient and we can run more tests, or we can clear you to fly home. So flew home, went directly to hospital of surgery, and eventually they figured out that I had a tumor behind my kneecap that had like moved, and it was basically preventing that, like, my knee from acting normally. So I had to have emergency surgery, and my life was not set up for me to need to sit on a couch for weeks while I recovered and wasn't able to walk.
Welcome to my world of falling off the horse in November, and then you break your in bed for 3 weeks with 3 months with a broken back. Yeah, I get it. And you think you're organized until you're in your bed for 3 months, and then you realize, oh, we have a long way to go. So, okay, so were you still working in finance then?
Yeah. So, and I still have my job, so I'm still in finance.
Oh wow. So I guess that's something.
There's a problem.
Because well, no, I'm just laughing because I'm thinking you're still in your high stress thing, but you're also having a burnout podcast. So that's going to keep you very honest, right? Because that's actually
it's living the life.
That's awesome. And when this happened to you, were you working for somebody else? Like, did you have a boss at the time? Or
yeah. So we have a founder.
And what did they say? Because I can imagine you're in New York, right? Or you're the time your office is, right? This is not like,
we're in Connecticut. Yeah. So we're
not Hawaii where it's sort of, oh, no problem. Take some time.
Yeah. I'm lucky. I'm privileged in that I'm the president of the company. We have a founder who's very understanding. Quite literally, there was nothing I could do. Mm-hmm. So this situation happened. I think everyone was pretty scared for me, especially before I realized that it was benign. And
oh, right. I didn't even think about that. Right.
Yeah. There was a whole period where I just thought I was going to die. And that was a scary time, and it's serious. And when something like that happens, you just recognize I have to get my ducks in a row, and I am involved in way too much, right? You have to make sure I was lucky in that I do love a good process. So the business was still able to run, but not being involved in everything that's something, mentally for me. I like being in control.
Yeah.
And
imagine that.
Yeah.
Wow.
We had to kind of like separate from that. And I had no sort of warning period. It was just like, boom.
Yeah.
This is happening. And then what was it? Maybe like a month later. So I'm not fully recovered. My husband, his ligaments in his ankle just like separate. So then he has to have surgery. So then like we have
there's like we need like an orthopedic feng shui. There's I go down the whole path because now I want to Google symbolism of the knees and ligament.
Yeah.
I never even heard of these things that people have. So his ligaments did what?
Well, he was playing basketball and he's had tons of injuries to the ankle before, but basically like his ligaments were not attached. So he had to have surgery. It wasn't something where, like, oh yeah, you just sprain your ankle. Neither of us were really able-bodied and, we're still trying to run the household and the kids. We have 2 dogs, trying to take care of my mother and my brother. It was very, very clear that I needed to make some changes. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm ready for the podcast. Yeah. I need to figure some answers.
How far apart was your injury from your husband's or your surgery from your husband's?
It was probably like a month. It wasn't long.
Oh yeah, you meant
maybe it was a little bit longer.
Wow. And how old were your kids at the time?
They were 9 and 6.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as you say kids and then as soon as you say 2 dogs, because we have 2 dogs, I go to the space of just the dogs. I would be, because a 6-year-old and 9-year-old, you're not going to just send out, even if it's the most beautiful Connecticut street, like, hey, walking those dogs, and let's clean up and manage them. I mean, that's too young.
Yeah. Yeah. And the dogs are one is especially crazy and he's like 100 pounds. So it was wild times for sure. I don't know how we made it through.
What kind of dog is it? The 100 pound?
It was supposed to be a lab, but it's actually a plot hound mix and some other stuff too. So he's a giant. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I can relate to the giant dog syndrome because we've got Great Pyrenees. So you're just like horses. Now, one thing you mentioned early on in the podcast was you said you've got to figure out like what's wrong. I'm not doing a good job of describing what you said, but it was something along, you got to get to the root of like, what is the issue? Mm-hmm. And from a practical perspective, so that people could listen to this podcast and then I like people to be able to get off and be like, okay, I could do this, this, and this, or this, or this. How do you get to the root, or how do you figure it out? Do you start journaling? Do you take a bath every day? Do you get a like, how does one take the first step? Because at least for me, when I'm overwhelmed and or let's say I'm burned out and I just maybe think I'm overwhelmed, or maybe you're tired, you need a break, and you realize, no, it's more than this. Yeah. What do you do then? Because as we talked about before, you're already feel like you've got too much on your plate. Now this is adding something else.
Yeah, I know, right? Like no one wants a longer to-do list.
Right,
so
right.
I'll break it into 2 parts because there's one thing that's very practical based on one of the episodes. But I think before that step, just have like a 10-minute session by yourself where you're asking yourself, who am I right now? Is it who I want to be? Especially as mothers. Sometimes you just lose yourself. And there were things that I loved doing and I had completely shut them out, right? So everything that I enjoyed, I had pushed aside. So I wasn't really being energized by anything. So I had a list of, okay, here's the things that I love doing that I don't anymore. And I'm going to choose to put them back in.
And why had you stopped doing them?
Time. Because I am like a maniac, if I have a goal or, a deadline, I will work my butt off to get that. And I didn't prioritize hobbies. I just didn't. And also, you grow and change. And I realized that I had always identified as an introvert and someone that was very shy. But over the years, it had sort of morphed, right? I think I still am. I have tendencies of an introvert, but I also have gone way past that where I'm talking with people all the time. I need to for business. I
you
actually
develop the muscles you need to.
Yeah. And I actually enjoy some of that, right? So I was basing my likes and dislikes on just memorized things from decades ago. This is what I like, or this is what I need to do, right? No, actually, I need to switch up my groups that I'm in, and I need to network differently, and I need to be around people. Like one of my rules now, I only want to be around people that are interesting and that are effective in whatever they're doing. And it doesn't mean that has to be business, right? If you love languages and you're working on studying, French and Japanese, and like you are actually practicing, like, great, that's effective. And that you have something to talk about. I have completely switched around groups. I even joined, I had Sarah Dale on the podcast, and she created this group called Project 1490. And it was getting me out of my comfort zone. And she had these days of badassery. And the group is great. I'm still in it, by the way. But
what is I'm not familiar. What is Project 1490?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's a group and it's for women, but she has a lovely balance of sort of like career and life advice and workshops and coaches, but also like outdoorsy stuff. So things like she talks about grace and grit. So changing a car tire, learning archery, starting a fire.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I do know something in the recesses of my brain, but okay, keep going.
Yeah. So I decided I was just going to not rely on that narrative of, okay, I'm shy, I'm just kind of going to be a homebody. I just decided to show up for her retreat. And I thought it was fantastic. And I was able to really laugh at myself about some of the choices I was making. I mean, it was hysterical because you'd be in these groups talking and then you just realize the absurdity of what is going on in your life. And that was a relief. And it was interesting to learn something new. Like, I think getting out of burnout has to involve curiosity.
Yes.
Right. And once you're learning new things, you can focus on being optimistic. And I'm naturally an optimist. That never went away. So I think I have not experienced burnout in the depths that some people have, right? There's some people that really need a great deal of clinical help, right? So I was always able to have a pulse.
You could see some kind of light.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. But, when you are learning new things and maintaining that curiosity, you are viewing life in terms of, optimism and innovation, as opposed to, I'm just mired in all of this stuff that is draining me and boring me. That was something that I did, and that wouldn't work for everybody, but that's part of the honest conversation of like, who were you and who are you today and who do you want to be? Right. So just do that exercise by yourself. Yep. And then you talk a lot about time from the sense of an entrepreneur. One guest I had on, Christine Landis, she is the founder of Peacock Parent, and she has a great website where you can go on, and it's like an exercise of time in your personal life.
Really?
And it walks you through what actually gives you joy and what really just takes away joy. So you are aligning what you want. And then the other portion of the services is they can match you up with vendors that provide services.
That's
so
awesome.
Maybe you do need, like, maybe you hate doing homework with your kids. Maybe you need to find a tutor, or maybe, you're spending money on ordering out all the time, but it could be the equivalent cost to just have a prep chef. So they can have someone come in and prep your meals for the week. And, because maybe you have a kid that can't eat gluten and, one person's diabetic, and it's like, figure out where the complexities are in your life.
Yeah.
And that like you don't have a great solution for, and solve for that. So her system, proxy, was very helpful. And I was able to do that with my husband too, right? So like, where are we in agreement on what brings us joy, and where do we like not match up, and try to figure out like, okay, how should we be orienting our lives going forward so that we can maximize what we want, instead of just like, oh yeah, well, we have, 30 minutes every month for free time. Right. How should we spend it? I think we just need to schedule everything differently.
Well, I think you've given me about 12 more guests to have on this podcast, because I'm like, oh, I should interview her. Oh, I should interview her. Well, I love that. And maybe my challenge for everybody listening as we kind of wrap this up is going to be to pick one thing that is totally bringing you down and substitute it with one thing that will bring you joy, or even one thing that you think will bring you joy. Like, let's say, like one of the things we were driving last week, and I said to my daughter, we should do like a pottery class. Now, I've done that like as a kid. She's done it as a kid. But for some reason, that just sounded very appealing for the two of us to do together. So that's why I say substitute something that's just like, with something that even might give you joy. Because I don't know, I might hate pottery, right? But at least I'm going to try something and be like, oh, this is kind of exciting. Oh, wow, I found out I hated pottery, but I loved fill in the blank, jewelry making. I don't know.
Yeah, I started with pottery too.
You did?
I did.
That's hilarious.
I didn't even arrange it. My husband arranged it. And I realized that I was so bad at it that I had to concentrate. So I wasn't thinking about work. I wasn't thinking about, my to-do list.
Interesting.
I had to literally keep it on the wheel and, from it going all wonky.
Hilarious.
So I actually felt relaxed by the end. And it was probably for the wrong reasons, but, not that I love pottery, but it served me very well. And
it's like being a bad skier, right? You better freaking, if you are uncoordinated, whatever, you better concentrate very damn hard, or you're going to be in the tree in the snow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I love it. Well, Patrice, any other parting shots that you want to, or advice that you want to give our listeners before you tell us how they can reach out and find you?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head a minute ago with just the concept of like changing the choices. Like, you're going to include more things, and don't be afraid to fail at them. So I decided, I've heard years of yes and years of no. I'm saying yes to more, and I'm saying no to more. And that works well for me. Okay? Yeah. It's balanced, right? Just cut stuff out. You can always put it back in.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Just look at your calendar, cut some stuff out that's not necessary, and then insert things that you think might actually bring you joy. Whether it's
like an elimination diet.
Yeah.
See, how do I feel if I have no gluten? I feel fine. How do I feel if I have no ice cream? Maybe that's the issue.
Right. Cut out a person or a group or a meeting.
A flavor. I love it. Well, Patrice, how can everybody find you?
So I think the easiest way is on LinkedIn. You can reach me there, Patrice Bonfiglio. And my podcast is on YouTube and Apple and Spotify. It's called the Burnout Club. So I would love if you can subscribe and listen. Everybody's got to go sign up and subscribe, listen, and rate her fabulous podcast, because the Burnout Club. If you haven't been part of the Burnout Club before, you certainly will be in the future. Sorry to say. So that's for everybody. Well, yeah. Well, Patrice, I can't thank you enough for your time and your wisdom and giving us all those details about that, about the research you've done. And by the time you guys listen to this podcast, I'm sure Patrice will be even further along with more research and more details about burnout. And I just wanted to thank you guys for listening. So I'm Marley Major. Thank you for being part of our latest episode of Every Day's a Train Wreck. And if you haven't already, please follow the show, subscribe, whatever platform, rate 5 stars if you're so inclined. And it would really help if you leave a comment. We just love, if it's good. If you're not going to leave a good comment, then you can go night-night. I've left a comment. Thank you. I love it. All right, thank Patrice, you, thank you so much. And you guys, go pick something to ditch from your list and then blame me. All right. Have a good one. Thanks, Patrice. Thanks, Marley.